Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. Today is another food prep video. I've got a fancy apple cake that I found on YouTube that I tried to make somewhat successfully, and a roast chicken from the hamper, and I shared some of the stuff that came in the hamper. I totally forgot to film the whole hamper when it arrived, so I've tried to share as much as I could remember came in it. We got a whole bunch of bread and stuff too, so I'm going to make some bread and butter puddings, put some in the freezer if I can, but we'll see. Anyway, come along and see what I managed to accomplish yesterday and today, and I will see you again next time. Thanks for watching. We got one of the community hampers over the weekend. I totally forgot to lay it out on the table and film it as we brought it in. It was a Saturday afternoon and I just forgot. But I did come through and take some footage afterwards when it had been put away to show you some of the bits and pieces that we got, and anything that I've used as I've been cooking I've mentioned and tried to make a point of remembering. So we got this giant, I'd say it's a 5 kilo, 10 kilo box of spaghetti. Dried spaghetti, which is absolutely awesome because we use this a lot and this will last indefinitely. So we stuck that in our crate where we store our dried pasta. We got plums, bananas, sweet potato, and we got bread and raisin toast. There was some hamburger rolls and some English muffins in there as well. We got a whole lot of milk, some chicken skewers, and a whole chook as well. The skewers and the chook were frozen, so we stuck them in the fridge to defrost. We got these individual serves of banana bread and some small cans of soft drink, which are just, they'll just be specialty items. And we got a few tubs of this vanilla yogurt, which the kids really liked as well. So one of the first things, we don't have enough freezer room for all that bread, so one of the first things that I wanted to do was use some of that fruit toast up for a snack for the kids. So I decided to make sort of a bread and butter pudding, I suppose. I looked at a bunch of different, I've only ever made it with like loaves where they're sort of stale and you break the chunks off it. So I looked at a few different things. They said to layer it like this so that it's not flat, and so I put it all in the baking trays and made up a standard sort of a custard with the eggs, and then coconut cream, some water to top that liquid value up, some ghee and some sugar, cinnamon and vanilla, all the standard sort of things for a custard type dish, and whisked it all up. I think next time I would make this amount of liquid for each tray, not just for one, but our ducks aren't laying at the moment, so we're a bit low on eggs at the moment. I poured it over all the bread and swished it all around and hoped, tried to get all the bread covered. Sometimes you add the bread to the mix before adding it to the tray, but with sliced bread it's suggested not to do that because it's such a fragile sort of a thing. I don't know, we'll have to make another one because there's plenty of bread. 2 trays worth went in the oven to bake. Then I made brunch, lunch, whatever, our middle of the day meal, and I sliced up some of the bacon that I had made, and we had it with the English muffins that I got from the food hamper as well, which is a nice change, not having to make my own to eat them. I fried up all the bacon. The homemade bacon you don't want to fry too heavily, it does crisp up and blacken really quickly, so you want to be a bit gentle with it. And we had homemade mayo, the bacon, some of the caramelized onion jam, eggs, and some on each one, and some salt, and then served them up like that. They were very nice. The bread and butter pudding came out of the oven and I sliced up a piece, so it seems to have set a little bit on the bottom to the tray. I may have needed to grease these trays a little bit more. They're ceramic trays, they shouldn't really need greasing, but it stuck a bit, and I think there just wasn't enough liquid. So next time I'm going to grease the trays a little bit and I'm going to put more liquid in it. The kids enjoyed it anyway and they ate it all, so that's the main thing. I found this lemon cake on YouTube. It was an Italian lemon cake and it was a video that had like millions of views, and the cake looked lovely because it was mostly just apple slices. So I decided to give it a go. I sliced up all my apples and put them in lemon water. There was a lot of bad apples in the apples that came in the hamper, so any that weren't usable I just put aside. The lady who made the dish, she used a potato peeler and peeled each apple with those really thin slices. My hands would not tolerate that, so I just used the slinky. All the bad apples we stuck in I stuck in a jar to make apple scrap vinegar with. So we basically just put all the pieces of apple that we're not using into a jar, and then you add a tiny bit of sugar and a little bit of apple cider vinegar from a previous batch, and top it all up with water and put on a breathable top on it. Just paper towel is what I used here. And then you leave it for a week or so, giving it a stir every day. After a week, you drain all the scraps out, and I feed them to the chickens, and then you put the vinegar back into a jar, and for a week you give it a shake, and then it's all good and you can use it. You can't use it for canning because you don't know what the acidity level is because it's homemade. Now, with all that fresh milk, we're going to mostly make kefir with it, because we don't use fresh cow's milk for anything really. We don't have freezer space either. So I had to strain the kefir that I had in the fridge, and I just use this plastic colander, and I use a spatula to make sure that I'm getting as much of the kefir off the grains as possible without smushing the grains through the colander. And we store it in these ghee jars. So I get 2 to 4 of these ghee jars every month, and they're a 1 litre jar, and they fit an 82 mil. I think it's an 82 mil lid that I buy that fits the jam jars from Aldi as well, so it's really convenient, and they're 1 litre jars, so I find heaps and heaps of uses for these. So we store it in the fridge, and then we top the kefir grains back up with fresh milk. So this jar holds 3 litres approximately, so I just topped it up to where I could top it up to, and put the lid on it, and then put it aside on the bench. And it takes, depending on the temperature, the ambient temperature, it takes anywhere from 12, or sometimes it might only take 8 in the middle of summer, through to 24 hours for it to ferment and separate, and then it goes back in the fridge, and then I'll strain it and refeed it again tomorrow. So the apple cake I used the kefir. The reason I was doing the kefir is because I needed the kefir for the apple cake. So it has the kefir and the eggs, some vanilla and ghee and sugar going into that bowl, and then you whisk it all up. Sonnet turned up and wanted to have a go. I nicely reminded her that she hadn't washed her hands, so she left, and then she didn't turn back up, so that's fine. So once you whisk up all the wet ingredients, then you want to add the flour, the cinnamon and the baking powder to the wet ingredients and mix that all in as well. I used the whisk, it seemed to be the easiest thing to do. You need to add some lemon rind. I had a jar of it in the freezer from when I had all those lemons that were in season, and I took all the rind off them, peeled them, sliced them, juiced them, whatever I did with them. I kept a jar of rind in the freezer to use for later. Then you need to add the apples gradually to the batter so that each apple is covered in that batter. It's a bit like an apple fritter, I suppose. And I suppose that is kind of what the cake ends up like. So you're going to coat all the apple pieces. Now these apple pieces obviously are a lot thicker than the ones that were used on the YouTube video, but I thought it might just mean that there'll be a slightly different texture. So we covered all the apples, gradually adding each pile and making sure that it was well mixed in. And then you have to layer it in the tin. So she uses a spatula, make sure you spread it out, push it down, spread it out, push it down. So that's all I did, is I just layered the apples, tried to make sure all the gaps were filled and all the apples were pushed down and compacted in this tin. And I have to say thank you to Candy for this tin. She sent me this tin because I didn't have one of the ones that have the sides that come off, and that was great for this, so thank you very much, Candy. And then the excess batter I just poured over the top, and then I just banged the whole cake tin on the bench a few times for that batter to settle into any gaps that were in between the apples, and to make sure that it's spread evenly through there, and that the apples are compacted as much as possible, because pushing on them is only going to do so much. And then I threw it in the oven and was just crossed my fingers that it was edible when it came out. I have a clip here, I'll just put some music over it, where I was making banana bread and Kavik decided that he wanted to help. So this is him making banana bread with me, and it was very cute, so I thought I'd put it in. If you don't want to watch it, I will put a timestamp in the bottom so that you can skip past it. when I make banana bread, I always make 2 loaves, and I slice it up when it's cold and place it in a container sliced, because that way there's no arguments about the slices. But I also put aside some sets of 6 slices into the freezer so that they can be pulled out and stuck in the fridge the night before for them to eat the next day. That way it lasts a little bit longer when it's portioned out like that. So I sliced up all the banana bread for everyone. For dinner that night, we had the whole chicken that I had got in the food hamper, and I stuck it in the fridge to defrost. So I like to stuff my chicken with lemon or lime. I had some lime slices that were frozen in the freezer, so I grabbed them out and put them in the cavity of the chicken. And then I like to season it. I spray a little bit of oil over the whole surface, and then I'll season it with a bit of garlic, onion, paprika, that kind of thing, salt. And then I used some of my flaked salt over the top. I have one of these Bluetooth temperature probes, so I stuck that in the chicken, and then I diced up some potatoes and placed them all around the base of the chicken so that they will cook in the chicken juices, and the probe stays in while the chicken is in the smoker so that I can monitor it externally without having to open the smoker at all, which would, change the heat factor. So I left it in there until it hit 76 Celsius, and then it was done, and this is what it looked like when it was done. So thank you once again for joining me today on some bulk food prep, food meal prep from the month shopping, and what we managed to do with stuff that's in the hamper and all that sort of thing. And I will see you again next time.